I'm here in Jerusalem overlooking the walls of the old city and sending all of you blessings. I wish I could be there with you in person, especially today.
I know you were just with Tiz and Katie out in LA, and would you tell everybody about hooking them up with the Consulate General and what's going on with that?
Absolutely. First of all, I was very moved, as I'm sure everyone was, as you were just talking about how difficult it is for you personally, Pastor Larry, to be away from Pastor Tiz and Katie while she's out there in LA. And I was blessed to be able to be out there last week. And we had lunch together. We had a wonderful time together. And I can tell that it helped to cheer her up. And I was very happy to, and never surprised. I should never be surprised to see that despite everything that Pastor Tiz and Katie and all of you are going through, the one thing she was concerned about, she said, Sam, please, you got to connect me with the Jewish community out here in Los Angeles. I want to talk and meet with like-minded people, and I want to see how I can energize the community. And I know, God willing, with your book that's coming out, they want to get that out as well. So I was very pleased to be able to connect Pastor Tiz and Katie with the current Consul General of Israel in Los Angeles, representing Israel to the Southwest United States, which, as you know, is the position that I was honored to serve in a few years ago. And she's going to be connected there with many members of the Jewish community to be able to bring your message of hope, which, you know, is something that we don't take for granted. And I'm here in Jerusalem right now. We're in a conference with Jewish leaders from Jewish communities from all around the world. And I want you to know that when I tell them about you, about New Beginnings Church and Larry Huch Ministries, and specifically today, the day that you're dedicating today's service to the Bibas family and to the Israeli people for the pain that we're suffering. I cannot tell you, there aren't words to describe what kind of comfort and consolation that really does bring. And you talked about charity earlier, and the charity and the support and help that you're giving to Keren Hayesod in fulfilling Bible prophecy and in just the moral clarity and the support and love is it's valuable beyond description.
You know, Sam, Friday I met with Israel's new ambassador to the United States. He came to Texas, and I was supposed to spend a half hour with him. We ended up talking for an hour and 40 minutes. Ambassador Leiter, and
you feel lighter.
I know he's a good friend of yours, and he's a good friend with Ambassador Ron Dermer. And he said to say, I told him we were going to be together this morning, and he said to say hi. But he was doing the same thing. He was saying how at such a time of grief in Israel, especially, with everything, but around the Bibas family and the babies being murdered, and how comforting it is to see Christians standing. And of course, he shared that his son was just killed in Gaza.
That's right.
And his son had, I think, 6 children. Is that correct?
That's correct. His son had 6 children and was training to become a medical doctor.
Went in to rescue some of the hostages, and Hamas booby-trapped it, killed his son. 6 members of his unit lost either one leg or both legs.
That's right.
And Sam, in a few weeks, we're going to be meeting. One of the reasons why Tiz wanted to get with you and get with the Jewish community in LA have been beyond supportive of Tiz being out there, and Katie, and they when Tiz is out of the hospital, they have Shabbat with her, and they take Katie to all the events and everything. And the Jewish community has been over the top. They went to a big event, and Katie told me that she knew so many of the people in the Jewish community out there, but so many of them that she had never met walked up and said, how's Tiz? How's your mom? How's she doing?
Right.
And just overwhelmingly supportive. And so I was feeling the same thing. I was so angry about when we got word that the babies and mom were all murdered, and I'm going to show something here when you're gone. I'm going to show a video, and I'm going to read something on the parashah, the Torah portion, the day they were buried. It's absolutely amazing thing. But I said, here's anti-Semitism. Here we have on our college campuses these, the Bible says, call no man a fool. These idiots that are protesting on behalf of Hamas, who on October 7th, after October 7th, they're just not getting the memo that enough is enough. And and so I said, we need to do, I met with our team, and we need to look for doing rallies on anti-Semitism. And the day I said that to our team, Tiz called and said, we need to do things on defeating anti-Semitism. And so they're meeting out there. How interesting is it, Sam, that we're going to be in a few weeks, we're going to be in France.
Paris.
We're going to be meeting the Jewish community and talk to them about anti-Semitism, and then flying with a whole plane, partnering with Keren Hayesod in Israel, of bringing a whole plane of Olim to make Aliyah. And I think it's interesting, I'd like you to kind of speak on it, that here's people wanting to leave their home, their country, and come to Israel, a country that's still in war on 6 or 7 different fronts, and yet they feel safer coming to Israel than staying in a place that anti-Semitism is so strong. Can you address that? What Jewish people are feeling around the world with anti-Semitism?
Absolutely. Actually, just in the last hour here, I was sitting around with some colleagues, and as I mentioned, leaders from Jewish communities around the world, and we were talking about the huge concern with the global rise in anti-Semitism. And it's all over the world, whether it's in Australia, of course, in the United States where you are, in Canada, in Europe, in other places. And actually what we were talking about is how, not only how unbelievable it is to have Christian friends like all of you at New Beginnings Church to stand up against anti-Semitism, but about how it's a lot more effective than the Jewish community standing up alone, speaking out against anti-Semitism. And we're so blessed to have friends and partners and allies like you to have the moral clarity and the courage to stand up and to speak out, because it really makes a larger difference. It makes a bigger difference. And, you know, when we talk about the brutality, I mean, I know the service is dedicated to marking the memories of the brutal murder of the Bibas family. And you talked about those that protest in favor of Hamas. I mean, it's been 15, 16, 17 months now. But if anybody had any doubt or any question about what exactly are the values, or what exactly is the message of those that protest in favor of Hamas, what they're actually supporting, it's just look at the picture on your T-shirt right now, Pastor Larry. It's what they're supporting is the brutal, senseless murder of a mother and 2 young babies who have done nothing to anybody, who are citizens, taken from their beds, and that's what they were supporting. That's what Hamas stands for, which is why they must be wiped out. And
Amen.
One of our answers, it's not the only answer, but one of our answers is absolutely Aliyah, and bringing more Jews from the 4 corners of the earth to come back to their ancient homeland. And that's going to be one of the strongest answers that we can show in response to these brutal acts. You know, just earlier today, I had the opportunity to attend a Brit Milah, the circumcision ceremony, the religious ceremony that we do with boys that are 8 days old, when they actually enter into the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and when they receive their name. And I can tell you that without even really having to explain or elaborate, there wasn't a dry eye in the place.
Yeah.
I was with my wife. I was with my wife Julia, who you know very well.
The best
And
challah bread maker in the world.
that's right. I'll tell her the best challah. That's right. And there wasn't a dry eye, and because everybody, without even having to say it, understands that entering the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and being part of the Jewish people, is at times the sacrifice, and at times the taking the remembering our history and our joy, but never forgetting also the sadness. And I was thinking about this newborn baby boy who really became Jewish today, because even though he's 8 days old, he only enters into the covenant at that time. And the first cousin of his mother was very seriously wounded fighting in the war in Gaza, and thankfully, thank God, is recovering. But this is exactly our answer. This family was a family that they themselves made Aliyah a couple of generations ago. The grandfather made Aliyah from the United States, and it reminded me, especially knowing that I was going to be speaking to you and the ministry today, that this is our answer. Our answer is to bring more Jews, whether it's coming into the world, being born, or whether it's on Aliyah.
Yeah.
So, the support from you, Pastor Larry, and from New Beginnings Church, the fact that we're going to be together in a couple of weeks in Paris, we're going to meet with the Jewish community, and that Jewish community has been facing some of the worst anti-Semitism across the world. There are terrible stories I can tell you about going back, whether it was in 2011 in Toulouse, a terrible shooting in a school. Yeah. Where little kids were shot at point blank range, and then years later, and you had Holocaust survivors thrown off balconies. I mean, these are not stories from 80 years ago, as you know. These are current events.
Yeah.
And despite the difficulty, as you say,
Sam, say that again so people can catch it. That old lady, Holocaust survivor. Say what they did to her.
There was a Holocaust survivor, and I believe in her 80s, who was murdered by her neighbor, a Muslim neighbor, simply because of the fact that she's Jewish, for no other reason, came into her apartment and threw her, literally, I'm not exaggerating, threw her over the balcony to her death. The woman who survived the Nazis for the simple reason that she's a Jew. And this is the kind of hate and senseless hate and anti-Semitism that Jews are facing in France and in other places in Europe. And so despite the fact that Israel is still at war, it's not easy to be in Israel right now. You know that, Pastor Larry. You've been with me several times already since October 7th, and we've toured together in the south and in the north. And thank God things are getting better, but we're still at war.
Yeah.
And it's not easy in general to pick up with your family and move across the world and deal with a different culture and a different language. But the Jewish community understands that they don't have a future there in Europe, and so the help that your ministry and that the church is providing, partnering with Keren Hayesod to fulfill Bible prophecy and to bring these Jews back to their ancient homeland, especially at a time like this, is moving beyond words. And you always talk, Pastor Larry, about for such a time as this, which we know is a quote from the
Esther.
Megillat Esther, the story of Esther of Purim. So we just had Rosh Chodesh, which was the beginning of the new month of Adar, which means that we're 14 days away from Purim, and the custom is that we say when the new month of Adar comes in, which was just now Friday and Saturday and Shabbat, we're supposed to increase in joy. And so many people were asking, how are we able to? What a conflict! How are we commanded to be more joyous? And here we have the Bibas family that we just brought to burial. There are more hostages. There are still 59 hostages that need to come home immediately. It's estimated that only about 22 of them are alive still. Yet we're supposed to be joyous.
Yeah.
All of these internal conflicts, and that's what it is to be part of the Jewish people. Just like at any wedding, when we rejoice, we always break the glass because we never forget our difficult times and our challenges and our history. But I can tell you that what gives us so much hope and optimism is knowing that we have friends like you, like New Beginnings Church, Larry Huch Ministries, that stand by Israel, stand working with Keren Hayesod side by side with Aliyah, with helping those in need with the war, and knowing that we will overcome.
Sam, amen. We made the title of my new book, From Junkie to Jerusalem, for a couple reasons, to tell people it doesn't matter how far down it looks like you are, God still loves you. But I wanted to say to Jerusalem so that I could get in there the journey that led us to loving Jerusalem, loving Israel, loving the Jewish people. And in the interviews that I've been doing, we just had the NRB, National Religious Broadcaster Convention here in Dallas, and I did interview after interview. And one of the questions that always comes up in the interview is, why has anti-Semitism all of a sudden sprung up? And my answer is, and I'd like you to elaborate on it, it's not all of a sudden. It's been there. And we talk about France. It was probably 26, 27 years ago. We were on our way to Israel, and I stopped in Paris, and I was invited to preach in the largest Christian church in France. Thousands of members. That church doesn't exist anymore. Islam pushed that church out. It's gone. But when we were there, we were in a shop right across from the Louvre, and we were looking at souvenir stuff. And one of my friends from Israel, I said to her, Gamazelle. And the little girl running the shop said, are you guys Jewish? And so we explained, why we spoke Hebrew, and then and she told us, this is 25, 26 years ago. She said, every Shabbat, we have to take our silverware, our jewelry, our money, and put it in the bank because the Jewish people are being beat up on Shabbat and robbed on Shabbat. And she broke into tears and she said, my grandfather, right before Shabbat, was on his way to put stuff in the bank, and they beat him, almost killed him, beat him up, stole everything. And so anti-Semitism is not new. But right. Why is there such a boldness about it right now?
So I think you're exactly right. And, there's talk about calling this new anti-Semitism and new hate. And, Pastor Larry, we had the opportunity together just a couple of years ago when we had Ambassador, now Minister Ron Dermer. We came and visited you, and we had a chance to speak together at a Sunday morning service, and we talked about this issue. And he also explained that, maybe for our lifetime or so, the last 50, 60 years, if you look at it only in that context, so this might seem like it's new. But the reality is, if you look back centuries and centuries and generations, unfortunately, there's always been this kind of hate for the Jews. And what happened was that the extreme events of the Holocaust and the murder of 6 million Jews was such a strong event that for several decades afterwards, it was politically incorrect for anti-Semitism to exist and for the hate. And so it was always beneath the surface.
Yeah.
But now we're so many years after the fact, and then October 7th happens, and the world sees the Jewish people and the state of Israel, which is the homeland of the Jewish people, taking a beating. And all of a sudden, what was immediately under the surface comes out. And so we need to tell ourselves the truth is that this is not something new. Unfortunately, it's something old that was just kind of suppressed, and unfortunately, the exception to the rule has been the last, the 60, 70, 80 years or so after the Holocaust. But that was the exception to the rule, and so we're seeing that now, and the world saw, and those that hate Israel saw immediately the beating that we took on October 7th, and saw that as a license to come out of the closet, so to speak. But that's why it's so important, your voice and your voices and the voices of our Christian friends about how that's absolutely unacceptable is not only so crucial and appreciated, but is the most effective thing, a message that really can be transmitted.
And that's the thing that I want all of our people here and all our people watching around the world, Sam, to understand is that this is our Esther moment. As Christians, it's our Esther moment as Jews and Christians, but as Christians, now's the time to speak up, because you would think that after October 7th, and it got out that what these barbarians did to women, to children, to civilians, to innocent, to the Bibas family, to their mom, you would think they would cow back and try to disappear in the shadows, but they're coming out. And to my point, Sam, you and I were together at the March of the Living last year with Rabbi Lau, and here we are with 10,000 Jews, a handful of Christians, and it's right after October 7th, and you would think that people would be ashamed, and as we're walking from Auschwitz to Birkenau, halfway through, we see these people protesting and honoring Hamas right in the march. And you
outside
think,
of Auschwitz.
Who would do that?
And by the way, I want everyone in your church to know that, Pastor Larry, you were the first one. I barely turned around and heard the commotion. You were the first one who ran over there to be the counter-protest. And you were on the front page there about that. Yeah, he deserves a round of applause.
It was almost a fist fight.
It was almost a fist fight. And that's what I'm talking about. That's why it's so important. That's a lot more effective than if I would have been the first one, although I obviously couldn't keep up with you. You and Katie were there within a couple of seconds.
Katie, too. Katie was ready to fight, too.
That's right.
But
that's
the amazing thing is here's these people. You'd think the world would be ashamed to associate with the rape and the murder and the beheadings and the beyond horrific events. And here they are shouting. And so when we ran up there, and there was a handful of Jewish people too, and they're shouting back in Hebrew, and I shouted out, Christians for Israel, Christians for Jews. Right. And at first the Jewish people, next thing you know, they're wrapping us in a flag, and and we're shouting. Little did we know we'd be on the front page of Israel's newspaper.
That's right.
The pastor of peace. That's why we've got to be loud, right? We've got to be loud. We're not going to be silent. We're going to be silent. That's why we're doing this. Sam, I know you're in a conference, and I hope I'm not taking too much of your time, but let me ask you a couple other questions. The obvious thing, as we partner with Keren Hayesod, and for those who don't understand, 98% of what we do in Israel, we do through Keren Hayesod, Sam. It's a Jewish agency, because if you do it through other things, somebody's taken their 10% or their 20% or their 60 or 80%, and Keren Hayesod doesn't do that. We caught Shmulik, but he's repented, and
not true. Pastor Larry's joking.
I said that in Hong Kong, and everybody other Jewish people loved it.
We almost left Shmulik in Hong Kong. Yes.
Yeah. And so everything we give to Keren Hayesod goes to the project. And we were so honored that we got to see, by the grace of God, when they were picking up several of these hostages, the last one, some of our ambulances were there with our name on it. And our ambulance was the first one on site, we found out.
That's right. And more than once, the ambulances that you have donated through Keren Hayesod have been used to be in the release of the hostages on at least a couple of occasions,
right?
And it's so heartwarming to see that.
So, Sam, the thing I want you to address, and forgive me for keeping you so long, the thing I want you to address is It's the obvious things of Aliyah, of fulfilling Bible prophecy, that Gentiles, as Jews, would come back to the land of Israel. We would bring them in our arms and on our shoulders. And so partnering with Keren Hayesod and the nation of Israel to bring Jews back. And when Russia attacked Ukraine, we partnered with you to bring 78,000 from Ukraine, and we can say now from Russia too at the same time.
That's right.
And
Right.
Ethiopia, plane after plane, Ethiopia. We buy the ambulances. That's obvious. We support the Holocaust survivors. We make sure we partner with you to make sure they're fed. But there's something we're doing with Keren Hayesod that doesn't look so glamorous, and it tears at my heart, and I know it tears at Tiz. Tiz talks about it all the time. So many of these young people that were called up to war weren't soldiers. They're Israeli, and as Ambassador Leiter said, so many came from all over the world to say, we're going to stand with the nation of Israel. And these are people that were selling clothes or working construction. They were just young people. And they ended up seeing things in the war that were done to people and done to hostages and done that even a hardened, like we talked to one army doctor over there, and she said, we saw things that we have never seen before. And so now we're partnering with you to help get these young people through this. Can you address that so people can understand that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do apologize because with this, I will have to end, Pastor Larry. But this is one of the things I spoke about with Pastor Tiz and Katie last week when we were together in Los Angeles. Besides, as you mentioned, Keren Hayesod, as you and Pastor Tiz know very well, we're not just another charitable organization. We're one of the founding national institutions of the State of Israel. We've been around for over 100 years. And we literally have a seat at the table with official Israel in order to set and address what the national priorities are. So besides the key areas that we've already worked together with you and continue to work for over a decade, Aliyah and helping the weaker members of society. Now, after October 7th, we talked about we are a nation at trauma.
Yeah.
In trauma. And not just, obviously, there are different levels of it. So we Keren Hayesod, have identified a national project assisting the reserve soldiers that are returning, in some cases from 100, 200, 250 days at war, who, as you mentioned, for those of your viewers and in the church may not be aware, but Israel's army, it's different than it is in the United States. We are what's considered a people's army. There's a mandatory conscription, and everybody must serve. And so it's regular people and civilians that go back to their daily lives, whether it's or try to go back to their daily lives in their workplace, to their families, to go and be a father, a mother, a wife, a husband, and there's tremendous trauma and tremendous difficulty in adjusting back to society. And so we have partnered with some Israeli philanthropy as well that have identified that there's what they call a golden moment where to try to catch what's called pre-PTSD before the trauma develops to actual PTSD. It can be caught at an early stage to really help, obviously, not just the returning reserve soldier, but their entire orbit and their family and their work environment. And it helps them. It also actually saves a lot of resources when you catch it early. And so we've partnered with a national organization that has been doing this. And God willing, when you and Katie and the rest of the group come next month, or it's not next month, in a couple of weeks, after you come with the plane of Olim from Paris, we're going to go and visit one of those farms where they do treatment for that. And I think it's a very important addition in the work that you and New Beginnings Church do in your partnership with Keren Hayesod.
Sam, we're going to let you go, but we also, just to let our people know, we also do this for children. We've been doing it for children that survived October 7th, that have gone through and seen things that are beyond horrific. And I've seen the video. You and I have seen the video, not the edited one. We've seen the video. And I can say for all of our people here and all of our partners around the world, it's an honor. We're privileged to stand with Israel, and we will stand with Israel until the coming of the Messiah.
Thank you so much, Pastor Larry. And to all of you there and your viewers, I really want you to know, having this special morning and the prayer session for the Bibas family, for consoling this service, consoling the Jewish people, the Israeli people, it means so much. And I share with all of our Jewish leaders the fact and remind them that we have our Christian friends that help us in not only getting over these terrible challenges, but being able to prosper afterwards and to fulfill Bible prophecy and bring Jews from all around the world. And we always mention together Genesis 12:3, that those who bless Israel should be blessed. And your blessings to Israel, especially since October 7th, but well beyond before that, have just been, words can't describe it. And so my blessing to you is that the words of Genesis 12:3 should be fulfilled, and you should all experience the great blessings that you're meant to be for your support of Israel.
Toda rabah.